thank you so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it. I'm super excited to have you here today. I'm very excited. The book we're going to be talking about today is absolutely brilliant, and really key to what we're trying to understand about decision making. So first of all, I'm just going to introduce. So Dr. Keeney, Dr. Ralph Keeney is one of the top professors, I would say, in decision making. He is a research professor emeritus at the Duke University and Fuqua School of Business, and Professor Emeritus of Industrial and Systems Engineering, University of Southern California. So before we get started, I'm just going to quickly introduce the name of the book, which is so it's Nudge, give yourself a nudge, helping smart people make smarter personal and business decisions. So thank you, Professor Keeney, for coming today and being with me here today. So I really appreciate it. Do you want to just give a little explanation about the book?
Yes, certainly. It's a pleasure to be here. And what is a nudge when it comes to a decision? A nudge is a piece of information that you generate about your decision that's going to help you better understand it. And better understanding it will enhance the quality of the decision you make. Let me give a simple example. So suppose somebody important is coming to town and they want to have dinner with you. You've never met them, but you certainly know about them. You're delighted. So you arrange to have a dinner at a restaurant near their hotel. It's known for its quality food and a local cuisine. You're looking forward to it on next Wednesday. Wednesday comes, you meet the person for the dinner, you go to the restaurant, it's a great dinner, but the night is a disaster. Why? What happened? The restaurant was too noisy and you could not have a decent discussion. You didn't get to really meet the person who came, and they certainly didn't know much about you by the time the dinner was over and the night had ended. What could you have done to lead to a different outcome? Well, first, in thinking about the decision, it was maybe not just to choose a restaurant to eat, but rather it was maybe choosing a location for a quality discussion that served food. Had you changed that decision you were facing, you likely would have never chosen that restaurant. Even if you didn't change the decision, you could think of, what do I hope to achieve or accomplish at the dinner? And you'd say, well, I want to have a quality discussion and know something about the person. You also might say, I'd like to have a quiet restaurant if you thought about the properties of the restaurant. Either one of those would have led to not choosing that alternatives and looking for others. And even had you missed that, you might have just created more alternatives and did a comparison of the pros and cons somewhat. And it might have appeared obvious, this place is too noisy, and I clearly want a quality discussion, and chosen another restaurant. Any of those could have led to a much better alternative, and I'm sure you each recognize it wouldn't have taken you more than 2 or 3 minutes possibly to come up with one of those, and had a much, much better evening as a result. So it's important to give a little thought to decisions.
Thank you so much. And yes, I totally agree. And so we've got to start off with, so why are decisions important?
Decisions are important for a reason that's not so obvious until you think about it a little bit. The only purposeful way you can influence anything in your life is through your decisions. So the only way you can affect the quality of your life is through your decisions. A key word I'm using there is purposeful. You can act without thinking and clearly get yourself into a lot of trouble. But you might say, no, there's a lot of other ways I can really affect my life. other than decisions. For instance, I could improve my work skills. And if I did that, work would be more interesting. I'd probably contribute more. I may get paid more. If there were layoffs at the company, I would less likely get laid off, etc. That all would certainly affect me very much, and that's all positive. Or I could decide I could exercise and get in shape. I could eat better and also improve my health. Each of those would have a big impact on the quality of my life. You're absolutely right. Each of them would. But you're never going to improve your decision skills or have a regular exercise routine or eat a much more responsible diet if you don't make the decisions to do that and follow through on those decisions. So the control that you have is on your decisions, the first step in the process of any of that. That's why they're so important.
No, that's so true. And actually, so what are the essential elements of a decision?
There are three real key elements of any decision that you should think about. The first one is, what is the decision that I want to address? And you want to state that in a clear way. You don't just want to say, I got a decision because things aren't going well at work. Well, what's exactly the decision you're making? Leaving the firm, talking to your boss or the boss's boss or whatever. You want to be much clearer about the decision you're facing. The second element is you want to think of, what do I care about regarding this decision? And based on everything that you care about, identify the objectives that you hope to achieve when you make that decision. The only reason you're making this decision is you want to achieve something. That's crucial to know and guides all of your other effort. And the third thing to do that you need to think about is, what are the alternatives? Way too often, a decision problem occurs and we think, well, how can we solve that? You come up with an idea one, and you think, yeah, that'll probably work. And then you start pursuing it. That's way too quick. Had you thought a little bit more, the second, third, or fourth alternative you came up with, likely at least one of those could have been better than that first. So a little bit of time thinking about alternatives and generating them is very, very worthwhile to do. One of the things in my book is it has a lot of different tactics and concepts, as well as practical procedures, to help you do each of these three steps. They're not complex. You can certainly do them, and the procedures are very practical. And each time you use them, not only helps make the decision you're dealing with, but it's practice to improve your skills with additional decisions in the future. And it will just become natural whenever you kind of have a problem, you'll think a little more clearly, how can I deal with that? What's the decision I really want to face? And you'll become pretty proficient at coming up with objectives. There's a lot of evidence, a tremendous amount of evidence, that suggests it's very difficult to come up with all the objectives that matter to you on a given decision. I've seen cases where there's a serious cancer decision in a family, terrible situation, and they say the only thing we want to do is get rid of the cancer. And depending on the situation, there would likely be many other concerns too, like disruption to everybody else in the family as a result of that, financial implications, and then there's a lot of means objectives. I mean, the quality who's dealing with the cancer, your physicians, etc., are crucial. And making sure that you have a quality life as much as possible for the amount of time that you're going to continue to live, which is uncertain. And you want that whole collection of important objectives made clear and aware so you can make better informed decisions. That's the whole idea.
Yeah, and actually you introduced that concept of the decision opportunity. So what exactly is a decision opportunity?
A decision opportunity is a very useful idea. And if you think about it, where do most of your decisions come from? Well, if you happen to get laid off of your job, you got a decision problem. You have a problem, and to solve it, you need a decision. Or if your house needs some repair, that's a problem. You got to deal with it. Your child might not be doing so well in school, particularly in this COVID time, might not even be in school part of the time because of it. So there's another problem. What can you do to kind of enhance their enthusiasm and their collection of knowledge, et cetera? All these are problems. They're solved by decisions. And no one wants problems. Each one of those problems drops the quality of your life a bit from where it is, and solving it tries to move it back up to the level to where it was. So that doesn't improve your life. It only gets it back to where you were before the problem occurred. So what can you do? The thing you can do is create some of your own decisions. They're not caused by others or happenstance. Something went wrong. You think of something you would like in life for yourself, for your family, for your community, and contributions you would like to make. And then you say, how could I do that? An example much earlier, you might think, how could I improve my skills at work? Maybe no one at work came to you and said, you've got to get a lot better here, or you'll be gone. You may be pretty decent already and making quite a contribution, but you're just interested. So you say, well, I'd like to improve my skills in this area because I'd like to maybe contribute more there and maybe even move into that area later. That's a decision opportunity. You created it, and nothing got degraded in your life, like you didn't get sick or lose your job. You stayed at that same level and created that decision opportunity. So if you pursue it, then it makes things better, given it successfully works out. So your solution to decision opportunities are the way to improve your life. They make it better than it was before you thought about that decision. A very, very worthwhile thing to pursue. And there's a lot of opportunities. And we all do that sometimes naturally. I mean, one might think, where should we go on vacation this summer? I mean, you weren't forced to maybe go on vacation for the summer. I mean, maybe some family members forced it on you and said, we got to figure this out. But maybe you just thought that. Or you could say, let's make a decision about one of the most exciting things we could do for our 2-week summer break or our 4-week summer break, whatever it is. Those are decision opportunities, and pursue them and can really make a difference in your life and be fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, that's very true. So what happens, for example, if you're trying to create an alternative that you desire, but someone else has control over that? So what can you do to make it a reality?
Yeah, that's a problem that occurs more often than we would think. It certainly happens all the time with children growing up. They get ideas that might be useful, but they need their approval from their parents in order to do what it is they want to do. But you go to school, you go to college, and you get all kinds of things assigned by faculty members and everything. So you need to maybe do what they suggest, not what you might really want to do. And then when you're in a job, I mean, usually somebody's in that job above you, you report to somebody, whether it's in a business or in a governmental agency. You need to often react to requirements of others. So, but what if you have a great idea and you'd like to be able to pursue it? What could you do? I think this simple story might illustrate the point, and then I'll stress it. One day, our son came home from school when he was in 4th grade, 9 years old, and came and said to me, "Dad, there's a special program on TV tonight from 8 to 9 p.m. Can I watch it?" And I thought a bit and said, well, who controls whether or not you can watch it? He said, "Well, you do." I said, "You're right, you do." I do. So then I said, do you have any homework to do tonight? He said, "Yes." I said, "How long would it take you to do it really well?" He said, "About an hour." Okay. Then I said, well, what if you didn't ask me the question you asked me about could you watch the television program, but ask me the following. You said, "Dad, there's a special program on TV from 8 to 9 p.m. tonight. I've got an hour's worth of homework. If I go do it and do it as well as I can I watch the television program tonight?" What would I say? And he looked up and he said, "You'd say I could watch it." I said, "You're absolutely right." So who would control whether or not you could watch that TV program? And a smile started coming over his face, and it got bigger and bigger. And he said, "I would." I said, "You're absolutely right. You would." And with that smile, he said, "I'm going to go do my homework now and do it as well as I can." And of course, he got to watch the television program that night, and he did do his homework. Now, what's the general property there? We all face these decisions where another person has control. I refer to them as the authorized decision maker. All you need to do to get the authorized decision maker to accept the idea that you're proposing to them is change it, the alternative a bit, to make it a good deal for that authorized decision maker, a better deal than otherwise. When our son said, "I will do the homework and do it well," that's what I wanted him to do. So of course I would let him. But if you go to your boss and you want it to take 2 days off, but not officially, you get paid, figure out how you can make a contribution that's more significant than those 2 days you'll be gone. And ideally make it even before you have those 2 days. Make your boss's job a little bit easier or do something good for the company. Very likely that package, they'll say, "Sure, you do that and you can have the 2 days." So just think of what they care about and include an aspect of that in the alternatives that you're proposing. It's a powerful idea. And collectively, these 5 ideas I just mentioned, the 3 essential steps of decisions: what's the decision, what's the objectives that you want to pursue and achieve, and what are the alternatives, and then the idea of a decision opportunity and how to create alternatives to get the authorized decision maker to accept the one you want. Tremendously powerful, no analysis. You can do that. And if you practice on a few of your decisions that are worthy of thought, not the most important, each time you use them, not only will you make a better decision, but you'll improve your decision-making skills. And those skills, again, are crucial because that's the way to best influence your life and have a quality life.
So actually, do you think anyone can be a good decision maker then?
I think anyone can certainly improve their decision making without question. And that anyone certainly includes me. I still pick up ideas myself and learn them in situations where they might be useful and kind of internally smile and think it's nice to continually learn things. So yes, I think certainly anyone can. And I think the ideas in the book with all the examples are easy to follow. And one will follow them a little bit and get better and enhance their own skills at using them.
And And actually, speaking of your own experience, so when you first used this nudge approach, how did you define your own values in order to kind of make these decisions?
Well, I certainly, before I even thought of Miss Nudge, I did that. I mean, I think, picked up very early that the only way to influence anything is through decisions. And I really wanted to be able to do things I'd like to do in my life. So I would think about it, what are steps that are going to help me there? And I mean, I worked some, like many, many people, when you're actually a preteen and a teen, and got paid some things. And I thought, this is learning something about working and what people expect in work, and developing some habits. And of course, they're relevant to the future. I mean, any learning is pretty relevant because similar decisions will be faced later on in your life.
That's very true. And what about the things that you were sort of forced to learn as a child, all the things that have become ingrained as a child? Do you think you can change those kind of habits from childhood?
Yeah, I think you can change some of the habits. I mean, the one that's relevant here is, how did any of us learn to make decisions? And the answer is, very, very few of us learned to make any decisions. We did pick up habits by observing others in practice. And sometimes those habits never change. Jokingly, I say sometimes that the first decisions we had in life, we only had two alternatives. We could be quiet or we could holler. And the decisions were, we were hungry or wet. So you start hollering. And what happens? Usually a loving mother or father will come and deal with your problem. Well, imagine if that happened 5,000 times in a row. Every time you hollered, your decision was solved. I still know a few people who are in their 50s and they get a problem and they start hollering. And the funny thing is, often somebody will come and solve their problem, because who wants them to be hollering?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit in jest, but we didn't really learn decision making. And especially because of that, we can really make a few improvements, because they're not totally opposite or saying you've got to change. They're just things you can put into your system. Decisions occur. You can more carefully define the decision, or think, well, regarding this, what do I hope to achieve? And on the dinner example, you could probably easily come up, well, I'd really like to get to know that person. I mean, I'd have admired him for years. And it's not rocket science, it's just clear thinking, and you will improve your skills doing it, and as a result, make better decisions. So I hope you have the opportunity to decide it's worthwhile to improve your decisions and give yourself a nudge.
Definitely. Yeah, and obviously, I was just wondering, given that we do actually have time constraints, how do you make decisions if you have time constraints?
Well, if they're a very hard constraint, you only have that much time, then I try to focus my effort on where it matters the most. And those three essential steps, what's the decision, what's you hope to achieve, i.e. the objectives, and what are the alternatives, is crucial. And you can do that at least as a first cut. In 15 minutes, it's going to look a lot more different than if you spent no time. So if you had less than 15 minutes, I mean, all you can do is the best you can do. But it's not too time intensive. Now, once you know that, I mean, if you were buying a car, some of the objectives may have to do with the mileage. I mean, how long could you drive on a full tank, and the cost of the car, and how much is safety features. I mean, you'd like to go look at how the various cars measure up on those, and get some information to help with your decision. But you do the best you can with the time you have available.
Indeed. And actually, I find it sometimes it's quite difficult to find or recognize a decision opportunity. So, like, what do you think is the best way of like actually creating these opportunities?
Uh, it starts, the high point is, what would you like in life? And if you think of any general aspect, like if you thought, well, I'd like to have the freedom to live in other countries for a while and experience things, then you go down from that. Okay, well, what does that suggest that might be things I could do now to enhance the likelihood that I'll have those opportunities in the future? So it's literally, in a sense, daydreaming, but daydreaming with purpose of what you would really like to be a part of your life at the highest level. Now you can do that at a more local level. You could think, recognize 2 weekends from now, I have no responsibilities at all. What could I do that would make this a special weekend?
Mm.
And it could be staying at home and reading some things depending on what you were, maybe making a special trip, could be learning things. I mean, there's a lot of things that come out of that, but it's just being a little creative and realizing you're in control of your decisions. Don't sit around until a decision problem happens.
Mm.
Many people do that, and then all they do is deal with their problems.
Yeah.
So think of yourself, not selfishly. It might be you're doing things for other people, and then think, what would I like to do here?
Yeah, that's definitely true. And actually, one of the biggest things I'm definitely guilty of is the do nothing decision making bias. So how do you avoid, just being completely avoidant of making a decision?
Well, that is one of the big biases. If we have two alternatives, or more than two even, and one alternative is don't do anything, I mean, it's right there. You save the effort if you don't do much. And it's been shown by the cognitive psychologists and behavioral economists, we way overtake that alternative. And just one thing is recognizing that that's a common bias that we have in our decision making. So make those decisions more consciously when you go with the status quo. But the other part is each of those nudges pushes you away from the status quo, because one of the alternatives that you're considering would be the status quo. But if you then understand what your objectives are and you see what you're not going to do given the status quo, you're not going to choose it. For instance, even with the dinner example, suppose one option before was, I can have a dinner with this person who I've admired all my life but never met, or I cannot. The not's the status quo. But if you think about why would you like to meet them, and that it would be enjoyable, maybe even a person who might hire you in the future, and you think maybe it's worth a tiny bit of effort.
Mm.
So I think just more consciously deal with that type of issue.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be the case why maybe people are reluctant to sort of set aside time to make these alternatives, isn't it? Because of this possible bias that we have, isn't it? And personally for you, so what stops you from being decisive?
I think it's natural for me to try to make the decisions. That doesn't mean all decisions are simple. But if I'm facing one, I'd just rather put in a little effort and make that decision if it's worth the time and effort. And some are. It's the meta decision. I think it's much more effective to not be indecisive, not procrastinate, just if you face a decision, face it.
Yeah. That's definitely something I need to work on. So yeah.
Well, everybody can, but it's anyway, I hope some of these ideas are worthwhile.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm convinced they are. I hope you feel that they're worthwhile. And I think they can help you and make a contribution to your improved decision making, which will have a positive impact on your life. And it's a great pleasure to be on your show. And I'm very happy to have been invited.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. The book is fantastic. It's already made me start to think more sort of strategically about decision making. I've been very scatty about it for forever, so it's really good to actually get the nudge to actually do the thing that I need to do, which is really good. So, and thank you so much again for coming on the show and speaking to me and taking time out of your busy schedule. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Suswati, and it was a pleasure.